These are not academics. These are government cutouts. I'm going to say that again. These are not academics, certainly not in any classical sense that matches any definition that you probably associate with an academic. These are government cutouts. They are self-aware that they are government cutouts. The government itself is self-aware that the universities are government cutouts. In fact, the head of EIP, the Election Integrity Partnership, the head of the 120-person censorship consortium, partnered with the Department of Homeland Security, even described his university department and EIP writ large as a government cutout.
There was a lack of capability around election disinformation. This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation was operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these four different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves. CISA lacked the legal authorizations, so we were able to pull together a project to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves.
So understand what he just said right there. This is Alex Stamos, the head of Stanford University's censorship lab, the Stanford Internet Observatory, the head of the entire EIP consortium with Stanford, UW, Graphica, and the Atlantic Council, saying that CISA, the censorship subagency within DHS, wanted to do this counter misinformation work, which, as you will see, is just straight up censorship work. That's it. It's not research. It's mass flagging and programming the algorithms to tune you out of existence. And he is saying the federal government, CISA, wanted to do this, expressed an interest in doing this, but they knew that it was illegal. They lacked the legal authorizations. And so EIP was set up to fill the gaps of what the government could not do itself. This is what is called a government cutout. When the government wants to do something, but doesn't want to be seen doing it, it launders or outsources to a non-governmental private sector or civil society institution working closely behind the scenes with the government, so that technically, even though it's government sourced and government sought, the fingerprints are on an entity at the plausible deniable level at a non-governmental way. This is stuff the CIA does. When the State Department wants to carry out a deniable operation, doesn't want the US government's fingerprints on something, the CIA will carry it out, and it will work through a series of cutout organizations that don't look like they're government. They will work with private firms, and they will work with universities to launder the operation to remove the fingerprints. But here you have the head of EIP giving up the game, saying they only set it up because the government told them they couldn't do it. They were expressly set up as a cutout. The whole premise of using a word like academic is to present the academics as if they are independent, totally independent from the government, removed, making up their own minds, a firewall between them and the government. And yet not only were they partnered, and as we will see, using government-funded domestic disinformation switchboards to mass flag your posts, they were a birth child of the federal government. They asked the government for permission to exist. This is page 21 of EIP's 292-page tell-all report, in which they bragged about everything they did and got rewarded by the Biden administration with a joint $3 million government grant to do more censorship for the 2022 midterms and the 2024 election. They also sell this censorship structuring instruction manual to other universities. What you see on page 21 here is EIP's operational timeline, their self-described operational timeline. You'll see on June 9th, 2020, this is 4 months before the election, before election day of the last presidential election, EIP had a meeting with CISA to present EIP concept. So this is EIP, Alex Stamos, meeting with the government to present to the government their proposed solution for filling the gaps of what the government wanted to censor but could not do itself. You can't get more government cut out than that. Actually, you can. These are screenshots, citations in the FFO report, showing that every single entity in the Election Integrity Partnership, all four of them, Stanford, UW, Graphica, and the Atlanta Council, all are funded by the federal government. Graphica got about $7 million in Pentagon grants. The Atlanta Council gets funds from the Department of State, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, the National Endowment for Democracy, USAID. And Stanford and UW, just months after the 2020 election that they censored, and 100% of their targets were the opposition to the Biden administration, the Biden administration magically gave them $3 million of your taxpayer funding to upscale them for censoring the 2022 midterms in 2024. That's a 5-year grant, $3 million for Alex Stamos and the rest, and Kate Starbird's groups. They asked for permission to exist. They, quote, presented the concept to CISA. The government told them that the government couldn't do it, so they need to exist to fill the government's gaps. They're all funded by the government, but wait, there's more. They're also a complete revolving door with government. Here you'll see that the head of CISA, Chris Krebs, in 2020, right after he left government, the first thing he did was he started a 2-man consultancy firm with the head of EIP, Alex Stamos. The head of the government side of the censorship and the head of the private sector side of the censorship literally went into business together the moment the government guy got kicked out of government. So the head of CISA gets in bed with Stanford University's Alex Stamos. How about the top deputy at CISA, Matt Masterson? What did he do when he left government? Well, he also went to Alex Stamos's Stanford University, Stanford Internet Observatory as a fellow right after leaving government. The top 2 guys rotated directly into the exact cutout that they had set up while in government. Alex Stamos, and it runs in reverse. It's not just the government with a revolving door to the universities. From the university side, Alex Stamos spent 2021 and 2022 directly on CISA's Cyber Hygiene Advisor Subcommittee. Renee DiResta gives lectures, as we will see, at CISA disinformation summits. Kate Starbird, who is the head of EIP's University of Washington unit, headed the Mis and Disinformation Subcommittee at CISA. So they're concurrently occupying these government advisory posts in addition to being funded by the government, coordinating with the government, being born out of the government, and rotating back and forth, totally indistinguishable. And in fact, the whole of society model is for them to be in lockstep.